What's going on, everybody? Jeff C here, back with another book review, and boy, I love it when I get a 5-star book, man. And I got one here. This is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. Wow, let's get into this. I actually owned this book for a while, and I picked it up a couple times, but I'm kind of a feel reader. I have to just be in the mood. I don't pre-plan what I'm going to read next month. That's why I don't really have any like TBR videos. Maybe I'll start doing those because I do have some plans for next year. But so this kind of just sat on my TBR shelf for a while, and now I'm like, man, am I so glad that I picked this book up. So this is a short story collection by Ted Chiang. Let me see how many stories we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 stories. And then there's actually a really cool section in the back where for each story, Ted put some little notes, just a few paragraph notes about the story. And so I want to also say that this is one of those things where the sum, as far as my rating, my personal rating, the sum is greater than the equal of its parts. I'm going to break down what I gave each story individually, but this book is 5 stars for me just because there are some ideas in here that it is inspiring me to go look further into that topic. It already has. Like, I've already read some things even while I was in the middle of one of these stories. I'll go back and reread some of these, and I highly recommend this. So it is 5 stars for me in that regard, even though I didn't actually give any one particular story 5 stars. What do you do? So the first story in this is the Tower of Babylon. Not a new story, not a new idea, right? I mean, it's in the Bible. We all know the story about the tower that goes up to heaven. This was an interesting take on it. There's also a science fiction aspect where there was a group that had to ascend the tower because they had reached the top, and their job was to dig through the underside of heaven. I thought one of the very interesting concepts was because how long it takes to bring supplies up, and there are people regularly bringing supplies. The workers high up on the tower, if a person fell from the tower, that wasn't really mourned, but if they dropped one brick, it was mourned because they knew it would take like a month or longer to get that brick's replacement up there. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. There's a lot of other really cool stuff in that story. It's not very long. I gave it a 3.5 stars. And so, yeah, it was a good beginning, and it made me want to already, like the first story, I was like, let me remind myself of the origin story of the Tower of Babylon. And so I've already looked into that more, and who knows, maybe I might read some more stories regarding that if I can find some. Story number 2, it's called Understand. I gave it a 4.25 stars. It's basically about a man who drowns and is pulled out of the icy waters just in time to not quite die, but there's some brain damage. And so this organization gives him an experimental drug called Hormone K, which is meant to repair neurons in the brain that have been anoxically injured. He receives a couple of doses, and not only are those neurons repaired, but they're highly enhanced. And so he ends up going into almost like a downward spiral of intellect. He ends up giving himself another dose of the medicine, and it really made me think. And this was the first story where I really slowed down and just, how smart is too smart. There's an aspect of this where there is like a protagonist to him, even though he's an antagonist to him. He's kind of the antagonist because he's doing a lot of things for selfish means. And then there's another guy who is kind of doing the same thing, but within the looking glass of wanting to help humanity as a whole. And then they kind of have a little thing at the end. But understood. understand. I'm sorry. Really good story. Next, we have Division by Zero. This was basically, there's a couple of mathematicians, and one of them, she stumbles across an old theorem that kind of proves that all math is built upon an illusion. So then she has to struggle with that idea of her life's work that she's been dealing with, and was it all worth it? Is it worth it at all for all the, her continuation? And so there's a lot to that, especially when you start thinking about what it is you do for your work, what I do for mine, and what do I get out of it? What do others get out of it? And what do I want to spend my time doing? And so I gave it a 3.5 stars, if I didn't already mention that. It was nice. Next was the title story, Stories of Your Life. If you don't know, that is the story, as it says here, that inspired the movie Arrival. I have not watched that movie. My wife has not watched that movie, and so we're both intrigued. I loved that story. I gave Story of Your Life 4.5 stars. And so it's two stories in one. There's a linguist who is kind of brought in by the government to communicate with this alien race that has set up these windows. They've put these windows down on Earth, and then they're not on Earth. They can communicate to us through those windows. And so the government is utilizing linguists and other professors, and is basically just, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Individuals who are just highly proficient at their craft to try to communicate and figure out these, not only the nature of these, what they're called heptapods, but if we can, inquire as to why they're visiting us. This is coupled alongside a story of our main characters also dealing with the death of her daughter and talking about memories of her daughter. And, it just really goes into, both stories kind of deal with communicating and like a metaphorical regarding like language, memory, time, and it's just really the way Chiang weaves these two stories together is just, it made me slow down rereading. I'm rereading paragraphs while I was going through this story, and I really want my wife to read the story, if not the whole book, just so we can watch that movie. So that'll be really interesting to do. Again, I gave that 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars is like the highest I rated this story and a couple of others on this book. But again, the whole book as an entirety is worth 5 stars and worth checking out. Next, another 4.5 star read, 72 Letters. This is about a toy maker who is very skilled, and in this world, they have like clay figurines that they're able to animate via a use of language that has 72 letters, and the way that you organize these letters and arrange them, and then when you put the paper into the automaton, it will carry out a task. And so Chiang is able to delve into like the philosophy of how language affects us, how names affect us. But also then there's like a side story about, this toy maker tries to get help from a sculptor who has a bunch of sculptors working underneath him. And he's like, hey, I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on how I can get my little automatons to help sculpt and help do some of the mundane tasks of sculpting. And instead of getting help from these guys, they start saying like, man, well, we don't want these little automatons to take away our job. So that whole thing about technology taking over artisans, that's a part of this story. And it's just like his ability to, again, to interweave these different concepts and super deep concepts, but just easily read. And so, but it makes, again, like I'm saying, like I want to dive into those concepts further through other sources. And so I've been thinking about that story, 72 Letters, a lot. There's even like a quote where there's like an assassin who comes to kind of get our main protagonist, and he says something to the effect of like, well, I'm kind of like your automatons. If you give me a piece of paper with the right characters on it, I'll do your bidding, or something like that. If you give a bloke, so it's like, yeah, we all will do something, that, of course, that being money. So yeah, it's really cool how those two worlds are woven together. On to the next one was just what's called a short. The Evolution of Human Science, I believe. This was written by Chiang, appeared in Nature magazine in 2000. So it just kind of, it's only like 4 pages, I think. It just talks about what happens with the scope of science research surpasses the limit of human comprehension. Interesting. That's something you could probably spend a lifetime just on that subject alone, and I'm sure people have. And so, again, yeah, it's something I'm interested in, and I'd like to read more on that. Not sure if I'll be getting to that as soon as some of these other ideas, but it was nice. What did I give that one? I gave it a 3. It was good. But I feel like if I was to dive into that subject more, I would come across some banger material on that. So, yeah. All right, so now we have a story called Hell is the Absence of God. I gave this 3.25 stars. This was kind of an interesting world where it's just known that God in that story, especially of the Abrahamic God, exists. Hell exists. Angels regularly appear on earth, but they appear like in the form of like natural disasters, like it's that, almost cataclysmic when they show up. But they also they perform miracles amidst the cataclysms. So when they show up, some people people want to see the light, and people journey to where they regularly appear, even though they can appear anywhere. The more common spots people will make pilgrimages to. And so we have a story of a guy who ultimately is influenced by a couple of other people who are related in one way that I'll let you find out, to make a pilgrimage, and they come in contact with an archangel, and stuff happens. It was a good story. What did I give that? 3.25. It was pretty nice. Yeah. So check that one out. That was Hell is the Absence of God. Oh, and one thing I liked is when hell regularly opens up and you can see like your family members, but you can't communicate with them. So when somebody dies, we can see which way their soul goes in this story. So I almost said when their soul glows. Just let it. Next, Liking What You See, a documentary. This is a really cool story. I gave this 4 stars. This was about, like, if you kind of think about what's been happening on college campuses in the last 10 to 15 years with certain ideologies being pushed and ways of life attempting to be transformed through ideology by certain individuals, which I guess has always been happening. If it's not people talking about ideologies, it's just the information presented on the campus affects our existence. But in this story, we have an idea called calignosia, which is technology exists that allows our brain to see a person. Like right now, we see an individual, and the more beauty we find in that individual, or less beauty we find in that individual, it affects how we treat that person. This is something that's been going on for decades and centuries. Millennia, actually. So in the story, it's called lookism, and so again, it's just you see somebody that is attractive to you, you might be more likely to treat them better. So what this technology does is removes that neural pathway in our brain. So even though the person still looks the same to you, it doesn't affect how you treat them. And so now there's a big debate on college campuses on, should we have this? That way everybody kind of has a level playing ground and you're actually judged on your merit, not on your looks. And so that's the debate. And then there's the side where it's it kind of follows a few individuals, and one girl's been living with this all her life because her parents started it when she was young, and she turns it off for love with a certain guy, and so you follow that part of the story. And then there's people who are trying to affect. There's going to be a vote on the main campus about do we require everybody to have this? They call it Cali, to be a member of this university, or a student or faculty even. And so you have the students who are for it trying to affect that change, the students who are against it trying to affect that change, and you have corporations trying to affect that change to their own, their will, and to their, investment, but it'll serve their needs. And so, and it kind of, again, there's a very big correlation between this story and what we see happening now, and how corporations try to influence an individual's thoughts to serve their purpose. And so, yeah, that was the final story. And like I said, there were some little notes that he writes for every story towards the end of this book that I would say, if you're reading this, when you read one of the stories, go back and read the little note right then. It helped me once I saw that was happening. I think I had already gone to like the third story before I saw that these little notes were there. And so, yeah, it was really cool. Again, 5-star read. I want to read more of Ted Chiang's work. I wish I would have started this sooner. But anyway, that is Stories of Your Life and Other Stories by Ted Chiang. Check it out. Thank you guys for watching this. Please like, please subscribe, please follow me on Goodreads, on Fable. I'll follow you back. I would love to interact with you there. I'm also on Instagram, so please follow me there. And yeah, we'll see what's going to happen next. I don't know what I'm going to read next. Oh wait, yeah, I do. And I'm actually I'm saying that. Yes, I know what I'm reading next. So I'll see you. That's another little short story. I'm doing all these short stories because I just finished like that Magnum trilogy, and then I read The Stand by Stephen King. So yeah, I'm liking the short story and the little books right now. So this next one I'm reading is like 150 pages. So I'll be back hopefully soon with that. And with that, guys, thank you again, and I'll see you soon. Peace.